Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us here on the FanDuel Racing social channels as we get ready to handicap a big day of racing here at Gulfstream Park tomorrow. It is on the road to the Kentucky Derby, the Holy Bull. 10 points going to the winner of that Derby prep. And it's turned out to be a good one. Just 7 horses. But I legitimately think that all 7 horses in that race have a shot. It's not just me that's going to be talking about the races tomorrow. I'm joined by Matt Bernier as well as jockey Joe Talamo. We're all actually here in Hallandale Beach, Florida, just at different locations. Andy Biancone's going to join us in just a bit. All right, guys, I know we've all had a chance to look through the PPs, but overall, yeah, I know it's not the biggest field map, but the quality is certainly there.
Yeah, I said earlier today with Larry Colmus that I think there's a chance that this field, top to bottom, has the most potential going forward. That includes the other 3-year-old preps that will take place on Saturday. We'll wait and see. Maybe it ends up being a bit of a dud, but I think there's a real chance that you end up seeing these horses, some of them anyway, turn into the elite 3-year-olds of this division. And I agree with you, Anthony. Just because it's a short field doesn't mean it's a great race.
And Joe, when we look at this field, I mean, there are several horses who have recency, and then we've got a couple of horses who are running a bit off the layoff. Partly what I think is that not all 7 horses in this race, this is not the goal. Obviously, the goal is the Kentucky Derby. So for a horse like Ferocious, who's going to take a ton of money, isn't this just a starting point?
I would think so. I mean, he hasn't run since the Breeders' Cup Juvenile November 1st, and he only has 3 published workouts, a 3/8, a half a mile, and a 5/8. None of them are overly quick, so I would imagine that this is just a starting point. And granted, he's a horse that's going to be coming from behind, so I think a race like this, whether he wins or loses, is going to really propel him forward for the next few races.
Well, one of the horses that certainly has recency is Guns Loaded, who is coming off of a win last time out. There are some distance questions, though, that Guns Loaded is going to have to answer tomorrow. To help us somewhat answer those questions, Andy Biancone is actually with Guns Loaded right now. Andy?
We're in Jose D'Angelo's barn. It's quite a party here, but Guns Loaded, super personality, drawn post position 4. Obviously, we saw him win the Mucho Macho Man 6, and it was pretty impressive. Just went to the lead and kept galloping on. He's got to see if he can carry that speed around 2 turns, but he did break his maiden nicely at Churchill Downs, and I personally haven't seen him in the flesh since Churchill, and he's really developed and grown a lot. He had a nice gallop today at Palm Meadows, and now he's just kind of standing in ice and having a little breakfast, but obviously loving the attention. And it's got a yep. Wouldn't be a first time that has happened, but he seems like he's really ready. Post position 4 should help him as well with the speed that he has, but beautiful son of Gunrunner, and Jose D'Angelo loves him tomorrow.
All right, Andy, thanks so much. He's a feisty one, Guns Loaded. This is a horse that likes to show early speed. I don't know, Matt, when you look at the pedigree suggests that the 2 turns shouldn't be a problem. But I think if you look back at his race last time out, it leaves you with some questions.
Yeah, it's hard to be overconfident about his possibility of getting this distance going around 2 turns when you consider how slow they went early on in that Mucho Macho Man, and they crawled home 26-second final quarter mile, going a mile distance. I usually think of, if you can get a sub 26 in the Kentucky Derby, you're going to be in with a chance. Never mind around a 1-turn mile. I would have thought he would have finished considerably better than that. You bring up the pedigree, Anthony. It's not as though he's not bred to go longer. Before I took a short price on a horse like that, I would want him to prove to me that 2 turns isn't going to be an issue.
So, Joe, I heard Jose D'Angelo, the trainer, make a comment about the gallop out last time out. He said, yes, it looked like Guns Loaded was getting tired in that race, but he actually, during the gallop out, held the lead, and he thought that Guns Loaded was just a little green. What say you?
I mean, that's hard to say. Getting back to what Matt said, I mean, that is a very pedestrian opening quarter, 24-1, going a 1-turn mile, and to win by just a neck, that would concern me. Saying that, I heard that as well, that he said he was a little bit green, and when the horses finally came to him, that he opened back up on the gallop out. That could be a thing, too, where I noticed he's wore blinkers all of his starts. maybe he didn't see horses coming. That's an aspect. If he could see a little bit more, and maybe if horses he could see him coming earlier, he would fight off. But that is a concern for me that he only won by a neck last out, going that slow of fractions in a 1-turn mile.
He's going to have to prove that he can get the 1.16 mile distance tomorrow if he even wants to be considered for the Kentucky Derby at 1.25 miles after that. Guns Loaded, your second choice in the Holy Bull tomorrow on the morning line at 5-2. All right, so the morning line favorite is Ferocious. Joe, you mentioned a little while ago, this is the horse that comes out of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Like many in that race, they just didn't put forth big efforts, especially the horses that we thought would, like East Avenue, like Chancer McPatrick. Ferocious was disappointing. Ferocious's best race was that maiden special weight race, first time out, when he basically freaked and it was in the mud. Comes in off a couple second place finishes after that in the Grade 1 Hopeful and the Grade 1 Breeders' Futurity. What do you think of Ferocious?
I mean, without a doubt, to me, he's the most accomplished in the field. Again, breaking his maiden in Saratoga, but then 2 seconds in Grade 1 races. And I thought in the Breeders' Cup, even though he didn't have the best of trips, he still finished 5th, beating 6 lengths. And to me, that was on a track that I think was pretty speed favoring, besides the Breeders' Cup Classic, where they went absolute crazy fractions, and Sierra Leone came flying in the end. I thought that day you had to be up or near the pace. So, again, his style coming from back that day, I really don't think it was a bad 5th place finish. Saying that again, in this race, the Holy Bull, I just don't see work-wise that he's a complete 100% cranked up for this race.
Matt, Gustavo Delgado Jr. has been quoted as saying that this horse probably will need the race. Doesn't mean he can't win, but again, this isn't the goal.
No, I actually had a chance to text with Ramiro Restrepo earlier today, who's part of the ownership group with this runner. And the idea is kind of what you just touched on, Anthony, the idea that, look, his last 2 workouts were spectacular. Why just continue to work on a race? You can call it, let's say it's 4 or 5 works worth of exercise in him. He's already got some points to his name. If he hits the board and collects some more, he'll be ahead of where Mage was the year that he won the Kentucky Derby. So I have to be honest, I kind of appreciate that the connections are doing this. I feel like this day and age, all we see are horses work. They run one time and then they go away for a long time. Win, lose, or draw. I like that they're using this as basically like, look, if we're good enough to win, great. But the goal is to tighten them up a little bit. Hopefully we kind of shake the rust off. And we know bigger and better is still to come. So I'm not going to pick him, but I'm going to root for him. I think he's a likable horse. And I'm hopeful the blinkers sharpen him up, Anthony, because I mentioned to Joe earlier today, I don't think he's yet run a complete race. I think there are all the signs that he can do it, but whether it's just immaturity or he needs a little bit of help, he runs and starts and stops, and hopefully the blinkers on will kind of sharpen him up a little bit.
All right, let's talk about a couple more. We have to mention Burnham Square, because this horse absolutely aired on December 28th here at Gulfstream. It's a very nice son of Liam's map for trainer Ian Wilkes, who's had a great championship meet here at Gulfstream. I mean, I thought after that race last time, the sky's the limit for this horse, Joe.
Yeah, and that's actually going to be my top pick just because of that. And he's a horse that is first and second start, broke slow, came flying, finished second his first time out, then third, and then you guys saw what he did last time. I mean, just absolutely aired. He's a horse that I think for Ian Wilkes, he's just taking those stepping stones, getting better and better. And even though his last race he won by 9, I still don't think that's the best we've seen from him. And again, his breeding wise suggests the distance isn't a problem. If anything, the further the better. But I just like his trajectory, and his works have been phenomenal. He worked 59 flat, 2 back for this race. So I think it's all systems go for him tomorrow.
Matt, how about you? Burnham Square?
Yes, Burnham Square for me. And there's really only one other horse that I'm interested in. But I think what Joe just touched on, the visuals there, he finishes his races. I would argue he's at his best at the end, which you really can't say for many of these young and experienced horses. I mean, he was 3 lengths faster in the final 5/16 than anyone in the race at Churchill Downs. He was 6 lengths faster than anyone at Gulfstream on December 28th. These are the sort of things that I like to see from a horse at this stage anyway, that they're finishing their races off. We can work on the early part, especially when you saw blinkers on. Suddenly this is a much sharper version in that run at Gulfstream. if he's finishing like this now, I think he's only going to continue to grow. Maybe the draw is a little bit of a concern, but I like everything about him tomorrow.
All right, guys, I'll give you the chance to talk about one other horse. I know for me it would be Tappan Street. I mean, this horse was very impressive. Ran the maiden race like a horse who wants more ground. And the fact that from this point on, you would never think that this horse was going to get up for the win, but somehow found the line right at the right time. I thought this was a super impressive performance. But Matt, I think it's a lot to ask of a horse in the second start.
I agree with you, but he is the only other one that I'm intrigued by. He gives off the impression that longer will be better for him. I don't like that he was a little bit late with the lead change, but again, first-time starter. Don't want to hold that against him too much. I do think distance is his friend, where maybe you can't say that about the rest of the field. Tappan Street, I'll use him along with Burnham Square, but they're the only two for me in this race.
And Joe, anybody else?
Yeah, Tappan Street as well, but that's for sure one concern. I mean, he broke his maiden very impressively in a 7th furlong race, but again, just off of that one effort to go 2 turns against this field, not that he can't do it. I mean, he ran a really good buyer, 84, 7 on thoroughbraves. I mean, he definitely fits in this field, but as far as just race experience, that's why I like Burnham Square, just because he's run more.
And I'm just going to say this. I know he's 15-1 on the morning line. He's not joking. Appeared to be a very nice horse up in Canada. I know he didn't run great on the dirt last time out at Churchill, but he had a terrible trip. I know Josie Carroll, just by the fact that she's putting this horse in this race, I think speaks volumes. And I think this horse deserves another chance on the dirt. He's not joking, winning back in November at Woodbine. Just has the looks of a horse who will run all day. And I think this is a horse I may be using, maybe not in the top spot, but underneath. All right, guys, just a few minutes to go. Let's talk about the Grade 3 Forward Gal, the prep for the Kentucky Oaks. It'll be run as the last race on the Holy Bull card tomorrow, so at 5:45. Matt, where'd you go in the Forward Gal?
I went to Burnham Square's workmate in the morning, the 3, Justin Queso. The last workout anyway, they weren't paired together, but the two prior works, Justin Queso and Burnham Square were in lockstep. I know she's yet to cross the wire first. I think she would have won this race if not for the horse to the inside drifting out as badly as she did. The pedigree is there for her to be a good horse. And, that race is a little bit of a peculiar one, Anthony, because depending on what figures you use from a commercial standpoint, some are out, some aren't out. Some would indicate it's a very fast race. Some would indicate maybe it's a little bit on the slower side. I tend to believe it's actually quite a fast race, and at 8-1 or anything close to it, the 3, Justin Queso for me.
Matty going with the maiden in the Forward Gal. Who did you like the looks of in the Forward Gal, Joe?
I like the number 7. I think it's Eclaton. I said that right, hopefully. 2 for 2 sprinting. Her only loss was the last out going a mile and a 16th in the Goldenrod, where she finished 3rd, beating 8. I just like to cut back in distance. Her numbers when she sprinted were really good. I think with those efforts, she could be right there. But this is a very wide open race. Again, just like the Holy Bull, you can make a case for a lot of these fillies in here.
So I did have a chance to see Saffie Joseph Jr. today. I actually stopped him on my way into the track, and I asked him about his 2 horses in this race. So the number 2, Queen's MG, who was very good early on. She won the Schuylerville, the Adirondack up at Saratoga sprinting. I asked him about the layoff because she hasn't run since November. He said she's probably a couple work short. He said she's a very light filly, but he thinks this is a good place to start her. And he did tell me that he's very concerned about the Brad Cox horses in this race, specifically Stunner, who last time out acted up before the race. And he seemed to think that was a throwout race for Stunner, who disappointed at odds on in the My Dear Gal. Matt, what did you make of Stunner?
Yeah, I mean, look, the race that we're looking at wasn't very good, if we're being brutally honest, but the prior runs going around one turn were all sparkling, really. They were extremely fast on the clock. And if she does anything like she did at Aqueduct, she's the horse to beat on the far outside. I guess the only other kind of cause for pause I would throw out there with her is the fact that those wins when she has gone out and strutted her stuff have come in gate-to-wire fashion. There is other speed drawn to her inside, so she may have to work a little bit harder than ideal to procure that lead. But, I guess if you can forgive that last run going 2 turns, she's as likely a winner as anyone.
Joe, I think Brad Cox has the two best fillies going into the Kentucky Oaks. They are Muhima and Good Cheer. Good Cheer beat the 7 Eclatant last time out in the Golden Rod. On the cutback, do you think Eclatant, this is just what she wants to do? She wants to sprint, maybe not go around 2 turns?
I mean, that's kind of the looks of it because even in the Goldenrod, she was up near the pace, and they really didn't go that quick. 24-1, 48-3, and for her not to at least kind of keep pace. I think the cutback is just going to help her a lot.
I also asked Safi about his other horse in the race, the 9, Rojo Rita. Matt, that was a huge win last time out. It was on debut in a maiden special weight race. It was back on November the 15th. Safi said he didn't think that, there was a ton behind Rojo Rita in that race, and he admitted this is a big ask.
Yeah, and I don't like how late she is to change leads. It still hasn't happened yet. It's going to come right about now. What I will say is the horses that immediately ran back out of it, they all ran quite well. Many of them improved by leaps and bounds. That's not to say that they're all going to be stakes runners down the road, but anytime you break your maiden by almost 17 going 6 furlongs, I mean, that's kind of an eye catcher. I go back to a similar thing that I mentioned with Stunner, the pace scenario of this race. If she's going to make the lead again, she's going to have to work a heck of a lot harder than she did on debut. Not to say that she can't, but I think you're going to find out an awful lot about these girls, many of them that share similar running styles on Saturday.
Yeah, I felt like there were a few horses in here who seemed like one-turn horses. So if they get the Derby points in this 7 furlong race, I thought they would be up against it on Kentucky Oaks Day going around the 2 turns. Anyone else you guys want to mention in the forward gal?
The only other one I would throw out there, I don't know that on paper, she's not good enough. I'm fascinated by Costa Amalfitana, just simply because the run most recently at Tampa, the way that this horse moved, threading the needle, up the wood, through traffic, down the center of the racetrack afterward, it was really visually very impressive. On paper, she's not nearly fast enough to win this race. I'm not trying to make a case for her on top, but I think she can hit the board, and especially if this pace ends up being pretty quick with those girls that have all shown they want to go, somebody's going to pick up some pieces. Why can't it be her at $1,000,000 to 1?
Yeah, certainly be a big price. Joe, final thoughts on the forward gal?
I mean, again, I think it's going to be a really good competitive race. I think Safi's horse, that Rojo Rita, again, like y'all touched on, I mean, I'm not sure what she ran against, but I mean, to win by almost 17 lengths, going 3/4, I mean, that is pretty impressive. And again, going back to what Matt said about her not switching leads, to me, that's an upside for her to win that far by not switching leads. I mean, just imagine if she would have and had that extra gear to finish. So it's going to be interesting. If she switches leads tomorrow and can open up, she could be dangerous as well.
All right, guys, thanks. Great conversation. Wishing you all a bunch of luck tomorrow on Holy Bull Day. It won't just be us here on FanDuel TV. Todd Schrupp is here. Andy will be with us, as well as Kate and Bradar, and the hot pick 4 professor lately. Right, Matt? Larry Colmus. I mean, he hit another one today.
He did. Pick 4 for more. We can forgive the $10 loss today, knowing that he's got a bunch of cash in his pocket over the past few days. But I was here with him all winter last year, and he did the same thing. He went on these tears. So ride the hot hand.
He is dialed in. All right, guys, thanks so much. We will see you tomorrow for Holy Bull Day at Gulfstream Park. Our coverage kicks off at noon. We'll see you then.